Good morning, and welcome to Winnipeg, not New York. Well, to keep tradition going here, we'll talk about the weather. We might have a nice sunrise this morning. We won't know for about half an hour. Still dark outside. I know it doesn't look like it because my cameras make it look a lot lighter outside than it actually really is. I didn't even bother opening the drapes yet. Because if I open the drapes right now, I'm all lit up in here, and anybody going by, they wonder what on earth's going on in there. Mind you, I don't mind. I actually had somebody come by the house here yesterday, and he came in and I showed him what I was doing. I said, "You want to see what I'm doing?" Yeah. Anyway, I was kind of proud of it. At least I was proud of the 3 ships that were finished. Now, what happened here yesterday? I did come back to the model table yesterday, and I spent a long time here, probably well over 2 hours. But I didn't do any videoing. What I did do was, now very carefully here, I finished the second catapult. Now, the first one is just the way you saw it there at the end of yesterday's episode. We're going to continue on with that today. But I wanted to do the second one. I was just sort of curious as to how some of these parts would fit. I got a comment from Paul, not military model Paul, but the other Paul. And he was mentioning how he had just finished the catapults on his Iowa, and or was it Missouri? Anyway, no, Iowa, I think. And he was mentioning how the photo etch was extremely, what was the word he put? Anyway, very flimsy. Well, I already knew that from when I was nipping it off the sheet yesterday. But I got curious, well, just how bad is it? So the plastic parts, they all went together in about half an hour. But the to get that photo etch on, boy, that was hard. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to carefully do it on camera or not. It's very finicky. I'll do my best today. We got a lot of day left here. We got till about 2:00 this afternoon before I gotta wind today's episode up, and some of the pieces I noticed that we were wondering what this little part right here is for. Well, it turns out that's the sled for you can't see it, can you? That's the sled for the aircraft to sit on. I should have figured that out. It's even got little tiny wheels made on it. But I got a little bit crooked on here. So we'll try and get it straight when we do this one. Okay, let's just continue on, and I guess where are we at with this one right now? I guess we'll have to, where's my manual? Oh, it's way over there on the other side of the camera. We'll get organized yet, folks. We'll get organized yet. Okay, just looking at my thermometer on the clock over there, it's, what is it, minus 4.3 Celsius. And it's quite a difference because on Halloween it was so nice. I think it went up to about 19 Celsius on Halloween, but that was kind of unusual. Okay, so I'm all set up here. Now this is not squeezed real hard. It's just enough to keep it from falling over. And the idea is so that when I try to place this thing, have I got this the wrong way around? No, I think this thing goes right here. We'll put the macro lens on and recompose. Now, when I was putting this part on the second catapult, which is now in a very safe place, I was finding that there's 3 places it has to make contact. Well, let's put the macro lens on, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And there is actually a little, well, we'll talk about it later. Okay, I'm not moved in quite as close as I could get with my macro lens, but as the old saying goes, sometimes less is more. Okay, let's see if I can hold this still here. This part that we're going to glue on has 3 contact points that you have to get all on at the same time, or at least should. For sure, you want to have at least 2 of them on all at the same time. So there's this one, and there's this one. And if you look closely, there's a little place marked off right here, and I believe there's another one right here. And then you'll notice that there's a little dimple right there, just about where I'm touching right now with my needle. This is the holder downer from Bismarck days, by the way. So we'd go to try and get this on here. I'm using my self-locking tweezers here. I'm just going to see if I can carefully release this. All right, it more or less is in the right place. I'll recompose here, because I'm not at a real good angle for myself either. But now this one is going much better than the other one did. The other one, it was kind of bowed this way, I think, a little bit, because I had to take about a 0.5 millimeter off of the end of this pipe. But this one's going on just perfectly. Yeah, I could almost. Well, let me recompose. I'll try and come in more at a lower angle, and see what we can do here. Okay, I think we're composed here about as good as we can get. Now, you see that little, what I was calling a dimple, is just about a millimeter this side of where this pipe comes down and touches onto this part of the bracket. And I thought that the idea was that the end of this pipe would be concaved to fit over top of that dimple. But I'm realizing now it isn't, because when I checked the other pipe, it was anything but concave. In fact, I had to nip it off. But this dimple is also on the same bracing part of the catapult further down here that's going out of sight right now. So yeah, I think if I just leave whoops, gotta be careful not to bump it here. If I move it maybe just slightly to the right, I don't know if I dare even try. I'm probably end up knocking it over. Okay, how does that look? Let me just check the monitor. Well, that, excuse me, that's pretty good. It could maybe be just a smidgen closer to us. There. All right. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take and drop some just extra thin, not the quick setting, because I want it to melt. So I'm going to just put some extra thin on it and just let it run down the pipe, because it will take plastic with it, sort of. Now, did I move everything? You know what? I'll bet you that I can. I'll bet you I can slide this a little bit once it starts to solidify. Getting my hand in the light, I hope it's okay. Okay. Now, can we move that just a tiny little bit? Not that anybody's going to notice. There. Okay, I think I've got it perfectly in place. And once that evaporates, it's going to leave the sprue goo, you might say, in place, and it's going to be fairly strong. Okay, well, I think that went quite well. Let's move on to the next 2 pieces, which are a little bit harder. Okay, time is marching on here, so let's not waste the whole morning talking about stuff that isn't important. But I gotta sort of do this anyway before we get to the photo etch part of this. So last night when I was all finished up, I was going to use a piece of paper towel here to get the extra CA glue out of my little cup that I have right here. And I guess I was going a little bit too slow, or maybe there was some moisture or something in the towel. And whoops, and it froze almost instantly in the cup. So I got to put a new one on here. And no, I really shouldn't be sticking my finger in there, because the protein on the end of my fingers, like the grease and so on, is one of the things that will start CA glue curing prematurely. If there's nothing to get it started, it just won't cure. Moisture in the air will do it, I believe. Okay. Now, we need... Okay, now remember that this part, we're looking at it from the top. So it's going to be maybe a little bit different than the perspective of the manual, that if I remember this time to superimpose it over top of the what we're doing. I think doing it that way makes it a lot easier to understand what's going on here. Okay, so we're going to want to be fastening this on. Oh, by the way, I was wondering, what are these things? And then I realized this morning, after I thought about it for a little while, in fact, actually, I don't think I was thinking about it. I think it just sort of came to me. These things are like a bumper, you might say, so that when the sled comes shooting down the end of the catapult here, when it gets to the end, it's going to want to have to be stopped. So this thing, I believe, is some sort of probably pneumatic or hydraulic ram, and the sled would bump into the end of this thing, and then it would probably go in 2 or 3 feet and slow the sled down over a period of time, instead of coming to a stop with a big bang. Because I imagine, I'm just guessing, but an aircraft like those particular aircraft, they're pretty heavy, especially if they were, laden down with full tanks and some bombs and all the rest of it. I don't know what the empty weight or the maximum takeoff weight of that plane would be, but I'm guessing. I'm just guessing, probably around. I should look it up. You know what? I'm going to guess around 8,000 pounds. I'm just guessing. So that would mean an aircraft of that weight would have to be going at least 140 kilometers an hour, so that it wouldn't stall when it came off the end of the catapult. And by stall, those of us who have had anything to do with aircraft or flying models, we know what it means by stall. It doesn't mean that somebody let out the clutch too fast and the prop stopped, not that kind of stall. Okay, all right, enough for rambling here. Let's see if we can, this has to go the other way. Well, we'll recompose here, get our macro lens back on. Okay, before I get started making a mess here, you'll notice that there's a little something marked off right here, a little square, and a little square right here. At least I can see it looking straight down at it. Maybe you can't see it too good. All right, now that is supposed to go. Just let me get a different grab on this if I can. Okay, you can see that where I nipped these off here yesterday, it looks a little bit on the crude side maybe, and you might think, well, maybe I should try and file that flashing down, but that is probably going to turn into sprue goo before we're through here. And what I'm going to be using is, maybe I should get just a little more shallow bite on this if I can. It's kind of twisted the wrong way on me here. Whoops. Sometimes when you try to pick up a round part like that, because the flashing is wrong on it, It either wants to flip one way or it wants to flip the other way, and you just can't get it the way you want it. Now that's kind of it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in now with some quick setting, and I'm just going to put a little bit right. That was a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to soften these. I hope I'm doing it on camera. Okay, and then as long as it doesn't wick its way into the tweezer, it should more or less just sit there. At least it did last night. Sort of mushing it into place. Yeah, you know, that's not too bad. Okay, I very carefully flipped it over, and it's laying on its other side now. And we are now looking at the bottom of the catapult. Okay. I got a problem. How am I going to hold this like this? Oh, you know what? I'm noticing I've got a little hair or something stuck on that thing. I better get that cleaned off first. But what I started to say was, how am I going to put the macro lens on if I'm holding this exactly right? Okay, bear with me. Okay, here we go. Now there's one little square. There's the other little square. Now we'll try and get these. Let them get nice and soft. Now, very carefully, try not to let this ping out of the tweezers. Oop. There. I'm looking straight down on it now. It should go, if I push down on this just a little bit, might get a little bit straighter. This has to come up. Oh. Oh. Maybe I'll look in the monitor. Okay, let's let that solidify just a little bit there. I don't know if I dare put any extra thin down on that or not, or if it's just going to dissolve everything. See, I'd like to be able to push down on this side and keep it at the same. I'm just going to make it worse. Okay, now where's my regular? I'll try the quick setting here. Just see, the quick setting doesn't have the melding properties. No, I'm not going to use the quick setting. Okay, I've got the extra thin here. The extra thin seems to, for some reason, dissolve the plastic better. I should maybe be doing one at a time so that the one can support the other, but we'll take a chance here and just see what happens. Okay, let's just hope that doesn't slump on me. Maybe I should get my heat gun here and dry it out just a little bit. On the other hand, it seems to be. Ooh. Okay. If it would just stay like that, it would be pretty much perfect. Okay, now before I accidentally break these off, and you're not going to get to see them in place, I'd better show them to you now. And remember, we don't want to make everybody seasick here by spinning this round and round like a top. Okay, I think you get the idea. Oh, and just one more thing. I just have to show you perspective here. Okay, now I have been referring to this thing as a sled, and it could well be that I should have possibly been calling it a trolley. I guess I was calling it a sled because it slid, but in this case it's got little wheels on it. Remember I mentioned that? I'll just I'll zoom in just a little bit here. We'll put the macro lens on in a minute. Okay, that's somewhat better. All right. Now you notice on the bottom of this thing, if I get the light just right, you can see that they've got little simulated wheels on the bottom that are supposed to go on some sort of a rail. And you notice that there's a couple of grooves running lengthways in this thing. Well, they are to fit on the track, I guess you might say, of this part right here. Now, according to the manual, it's supposed to be positioned just like that. Now I got it pretty good this time. It's just about exactly where it's supposed to go. And maybe we'll put our macro lens on and let some glue wick its way underneath that. I'll probably just use the quick setting. You know, I could also lift this thing up, I guess, and put something thicker on there, but I don't think I need to. But just yeah, let's just reposition here. Now, before we reposition, let's have a little bit of fun yet. And I can honestly say I have not tried this, so I don't know if it's going to work or not. But if this was to slide out to the end, maybe this isn't going to work as good as I'd hoped. What would happen when the sled comes to the end here? Sure, you can see that it's going to line up with those parts that we put here on the end that I thought were, you know, a brake or a dampening bumper. Okay, so that's what they are. You know, we should see if we can actually find this in Stefan's book, either in the drawings or maybe if we're lucky, we'd actually be able to find an actual photograph. Okay, let's get back here where we was and get our macro lens on. Okay, I'm looking straight down on it now. And as near as I can tell, I've got it centered on the track. And I think I've got it in the right orientation according to the manual as to where they wanted to place the airplane on it. I think if it was a few millimeters one way or the other, it wouldn't make a lot of difference. Okay, we're just going to use the quick setting here. And we'll just let it wick its way underneath from the back. It's kind of sloped to the front. Now, wicking doesn't necessarily work with gravity, so it doesn't really matter. I imagine it's going to wick up almost as well as it'll wick down. Okay, that's going to be enough. We'll just let that solidify now. Now I have the compulsion to want to poke at it, but I think I'll probably just make it worse. I don't see how I can improve on it looking straight down on it, so let's just leave it. Okay, I have spent the last few minutes on the computer, quite a few minutes, editing out what we have seen up till now. And I put a piece of paper in my pocket to remind me to say we will deal with the weight and everything of the aircraft until we actually start doing it. I did look it up, spent quite a bit of time, and I concluded that aircraft was not the same type of aircraft as the float plane that was on the Bismarck. The Bismarck was actually, the one on the Bismarck was sort of a fighter with floats on it. It actually had machine guns in the wings and so on. Whereas I don't think that this aircraft did. It was more of a reconnaissance aircraft, and from what I can tell, it was only about half the weight of the one that was on the Bismarck. And yeah, it wasn't meant for the same sort of thing at all. Yeah, so we'll talk about the aircraft and so on when we actually start putting it together. And what was the other thing I was going to say? Oh yeah, the bird feeder. You notice the bird feeder is pretty well full. Well, it's been like that for a few days now. A lot of the birds, except that one, have flown south, and I don't blame them. Okay, I'm going to call today's episode quits here, and we're going to have to deal with our photo etch later in tomorrow's episode, because I want to be able to take my time at it. I don't want to rush it and bend it wrong, because I remember from when I did the other one last night, it's a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. So we did pretty good here today. We did pretty good. So thanks for watching, everybody. And all being well, we're going to see you tomorrow.